At a family gathering, my stepmother threw coffee on my dad's face as soon as I mentioned my father's job at the factory. She laughed uncontrollably while doing it. My stepfather watched without saying a word. The coffee stain spread across the suit my dad had cleaned just for this day. Thankfully, the coffee was only lukewarm, so there was no risk of burns. I was shocked but quickly handed a napkin to my dad. Henry, my boyfriend, was panicking as he tried to clean my dad's suit. He couldn't stop himself from laughing at his parents' ridiculous behavior. During this chaos, my dad just stood up, pointed at them, and sternly said he would ruin their company. This was a tone I had never heard him use before. He took my hand, and we started to leave the Hamilton Hill household. Henry scolded his parents and hurried after us, apologizing. He promised his parents would say sorry later, but my dad dismissed it, saying we were done with them. My name is Olivia Wilde, a 29-year-old office worker. My dad raised me alone after my mom died when I was little. He ran the factory and always made time for my school events, often rushing back to work afterward. I admired him immensely for that dedication. In college, I dated Henry, who was 4 years older than me. He was a gentle, sincere, and polite guy, well-liked at school. He accepted my feelings, and we started dating. Although he hinted at issues with his parents, he never went into details, and I didn't press him. Henry had been living on his own since college, though he visited his parents occasionally and always seemed worn out afterward. When Henry first met my dad, despite his family troubles, he always prioritized me, and that made me proud of him. I was eager to see how my dad and Henry would get along, so I planned to introduce them. It was a mix of nervousness and excitement when we unexpectedly ran into my dad during a date. "Oh, Dad, aren't you supposed to be at work today? What's going on?" I asked. "Ah, Olivia, is that you? I'm just coming back from a client meeting." "And who is this?" he replied. "This is Henry Hamilton Hill. We're dating," I said. My dad has a serious look that can be intimidating, but he isn't really stern. Henry was quite nervous when he met my dad for the first time. He bowed deeply and said, "Nice to meet you. I'm Henry Hamilton Hill. I'm honored to be dating Olivia." My dad smiled warmly at Henry's respectful greeting and started chatting with him. "So you're Olivia's boyfriend? Don't be so nervous. Take good care of her, okay?" "Yes, I'll do my best. Thank you," Henry replied. As they continued talking, Henry became more relaxed and they seemed to get along well. I was relieved to see the 3 important men in my life connecting. I had worried about whether my dad would like Henry. We couldn't stay long since my dad had to return to work, so after saying goodbye, I turned to Henry, who seemed a bit dazed. I asked if something was wrong, and he suddenly got excited. "That was really your dad, right?" he asked, which puzzled me. "Yes, that's my dad." "Why? What's up?" I replied. Henry just crossed his arms and seemed lost in thought. Curious, I asked him what he was thinking about so intensely. "It's nothing big, just wondering," he said vaguely, which left me feeling uneasy. He dodged any more questions about it. Although he said he liked my dad, I started to worry whether he really did. This concern stayed with me until a few days later when Henry called me for an important talk. Nervous about our last meeting with my dad, I went to the cafe where we planned to meet. Seeing Henry's gloomy face through the glass as I walked in only deepened my anxiety, but I decided to stay cheerful as I greeted him. I slowly walked over to Henry, who was deeply sighing. I gently tapped him on the shoulder, surprising him. "Whoa, Olivia, you scared me," he exclaimed, holding his chest and widening his eyes as he saw me. I was taken aback by how jumpy he was. He seemed really troubled. Sitting across from Henry, who still looked gloomy, I ordered from the waiter. My anxiety increased as his expression stayed down. I really wanted him to share what was on his mind, so I spoke up. "Hey Henry, what's bothering you so much? Is there something wrong with my dad?" I asked. Henry quickly looked up and immediately shook his head. "Absolutely not. I actually respect your dad. It's just my. He trailed off and looked down again. I sighed, feeling like I needed to pull the words out of him. If you're worried about something, I want to know. What's on your mind? I urged him. Henry took a deep breath, as if deciding to open up, and then began to talk. There's something I need to tell you about my parents. It's a bit of a long story, but I need you to hear it all, he said. The story Henry shared was quite shocking. He told me that his parents are very judgmental, always looking at people's education and jobs. They've been very controlling in his life, even going as far as to rudely dismiss any girlfriend he introduced right away, which always ended with the girls breaking up with him in tears. That's why Henry was hesitant about our relationship, especially about introducing me to his parents. But I reassured him, don't worry, we don't need to involve your parents much in our marriage. We can just handle the wedding formalities and that's it. My dad seems to like you, so what's the problem? It's okay, my dad liked you, so there's nothing to worry about. Really? That makes me happy, Henry responded, a smile breaking through his worries. When I first met your dad, I was surprised by how different he is from my own parents. I thought about how marrying Olivia would make me the son of such a great man, but it also means my parents become your parents, and I wasn't sure about that. I perked up when you said your dad liked me, but then I sighed deeply again. However, I had an idea and looked up, apologizing. When we go meet my parents for our marriage, can we have your dad come too? I want them to see that there are respectable people like him. It might not change them right away, but I hope it helps. Okay, I'll talk to my dad about it, but I wish you had approached this differently, I said. Oh, sorry, I'll do it properly from now, Henry replied, suddenly realizing he should have proposed in a more traditional way. After receiving Henry's proposal, I decided to talk to my father about joining us when meeting Henry's parents. Initially hesitant, my dad agreed when Henry formally asked for my hand in marriage. We then set a date to meet his parents. On the day, dressed up and standing at Henry's family home's front door, I was understandably nervous after hearing all the stories. My dad tried to lighten the mood, laughing and encouraging us. No need to be so tense. Henry's parents are just overly concerned. Be confident. His reassurance helped calm my nerves a bit. At the door, Henry rang the bell, but there was no sound. Wondering if they weren't home, he rang again with no answer. Not wanting to make a bad impression in front of my dad, Henry excused himself and went inside first. My father and I exchanged worried glances and waited quietly. Soon, Henry came out looking flustered. Before I could ask what was wrong, he put on a forced smile and said, "Sorry for the delay. Please wait a bit longer. We'll be ready soon." Then he went back inside. My dad sighed in exasperation, and I felt increasingly anxious. This incident could even jeopardize our wedding plans. My father isn't short-tempered, but he really dislikes dishonesty. I was worried about the worst-case scenario as we waited outside. Finally, Henry came out and awkwardly invited us inside. His parents were waiting for us, but they seemed odd. His mother had a slight grin, and his father looked away, uninterested. We were led to the living room, where the coffee served was hastily made and lukewarm. The whole situation made me uneasy, but I decided to continue with the introductions. Henry, trying to regain his composure, introduced my dad and me. Although Henry's introduction was warm and thoughtful, his parents sneered at us. Suddenly, his mother grabbed a coffee cup, and as soon as she spoke about calling off the engagement, she splashed coffee on my dad. My father-in-law, who was smiling and giggling next to her, didn't scold her. The coffee stain quickly spread on the suit my dad had cleaned for the day. Luckily, the coffee was lukewarm, so there was no risk of burns. Shocked, I handed my dad a handkerchief while Henry frantically tried to wipe off the suit, worried about any potential injuries. Henry's parents just laughed in response. My dad, however, remained calm. He stood up, pointed at them, and declared he would ruin their company. He spoke in a tone I had never heard before, took my hand, and we left the Hamilton Hill house. Henry scolded his parents and then quickly followed us. "I'm really sorry. I'll have my parents apologize later," Henry said to my dad, who gravely replied, "No need. We're done with them anyway," as he patted Henry on the shoulder. We went back to our house, and my dad immediately changed his clothes. Meanwhile, Henry was earnestly apologizing outside my dad's room. I could hear my dad's troubled voice occasionally, but I was too shocked by Henry's parents' behavior to pay much attention. I knew getting along with Henry's parents would be tough, but I never expected them to act so rudely. Furious at how they insulted my dad, I sat on the living room sofa, clenching my fists and replaying the event in my mind. It wasn't helping, but I couldn't stop myself. When my dad finished changing, he and Henry came into the living room. Henry immediately started apologizing to me, almost bowing. "Olivia, I'm really sorry. I never expected them to do such a thing, especially to insult your dad. I'm truly sorry. What happened was terrible," Henry said. He was sincere and didn't even ask for forgiveness, showing he knew it wasn't easily forgivable. Seeing his earnest apology, I realized I had to apologize too. I took Henry's hand as he knelt and said, "I'm sorry too. I should not have suggested meeting without knowing everything. I didn't expect things to turn out this way." Then, I turned to my dad and apologized from the bot Henry of my heart. "Dad, I'm sorry this happened because of my thoughtless suggestion." My dad just looked down, troubled, and shrugged his shoulders. It was hard for him to say anything. None of us expected this to happen, but that meant my dad's threat was serious. I decided to ask him about it. "Dad, was what you said true? Are you really going to ruin their company?" I asked. My dad glanced at Henry, then nodded firmly. "Yes, it's true. I'm going to ruin their company. Their business was already struggling, so I've been thinking about what to do. This seems like a good opportunity to cut ties," my dad stated, his eyes showing unwavering determination. He runs an industrial company and is the CEO. His company is a top local enterprise where he serves as both the factory manager and CEO. He started as a worker in this factory and gave up his dream of becoming a painter to raise me alone after my mom passed away. He worked tirelessly, and his hard work led to several promotions. Eventually, he caught the attention of the former CEO, who chose my dad as his successor when he retired. The company has expanded, owning various subsidiaries, one of which is managed by Henry's father, my father-in-law. We discovered this during our recent visit. Ideally, my father-in-law should have realized this, but he didn't, due to the premature actions of Henry's mother. Henry just wanted to explain that his father worked for a subsidiary of my dad's company. However, his parents' prejudices prevented this from being clarified, leading to the current situation. If only his parents had listened. My father mentioned that his company was having some management problems, and he was thinking about what to do next. He mentioned layoffs might improve things, but he really wanted to avoid that. "It's a good chance to decide which parts to downsize," he said with a troubled smile, clearly not wanting to fire any workers. You could tell he regretted even considering it. After a serious talk with my dad, Henry spoke to him quietly. "I've decided to close it down, but that means your parents will be in trouble." "It's harsh, but are you okay with that?" Henry hesitated at first, then looked firmly at my father and replied, "I've already cut ties with them. They did something unforgivable. Part of their consequence is dealing with their actions. More than that, I want them to think about what they've done, including this incident. But I have a request. I know it's awkward to ask now, but please let me get engaged to Olivia. I know I've caused trouble because of my parents, but I want to be with her more than anything. Please forgive me." Moved by Henry's sincerity and despite the situation, I'd also pleaded with my dad. "Please, Dad, I know how things have turned out, but I want to be with Henry." After listening to us, my dad thought for a while, then seemed to resign himself. "If you both feel the same, it's fine, but there's one condition. Your parents are company executives. I need to know what you plan to do with their employees. If you can't handle that, the marriage is off, he said, and then sent Henry away, not even looking at me before he went back to his room. A few days later, Henry prepared a plan for the employees at his father's company. He arranged a meeting with my dad, and when I got home from work, they were discussing it. Henry had written down possible job placements for all the employees and was showing it to my dad, hoping he could employ them at his company. Henry expressed his desire to help with the transition and add energy to the business. I also selfishly want to work at your company. I'll work for free until everything is stable and we see results. I want to make up for any problems with my hard work, Henry said, bowing to my father. He seemed to feel partly responsible for his own company's problems and was determined to work hard to help resolve the situation. I just learned our marriage would be delayed, but it was a necessary delay. Welcome back, Olivia. I'm sorry for making such a big decision alone, but it wouldn't be fair if I were the only one happy, Henry explained. You're too selfish. Dad, please let me work at the company with Henry. I'll also work for free, and I want you to accept Henry's proposal, I said, despite Henry trying to stop me. I insisted firmly and begged my dad. While this was happening, my dad didn't say anything, but after repeated pleas, he uncrossed his arms and quietly nodded. Meanwhile, Henry's parents still hadn't apologized. My dad seemed to have been waiting for their apology for the past few days, but that time was up. Time's up, he muttered, starting to prepare to take over my father-in-law's company. Time passed, and the day came when the company collapsed. Henry's parents contacted us in protest, summoning us to their home. When we arrived, the place was crowded with people protesting the closure. They were all former employees, angry and shouting. It seemed Henry's father hadn't explained anything to them. By summoning us, it looked like his parents intended to blame us for their failure. As soon as they saw us, they pointed at us and started accusing. Look there, that's the root of all evil. It's not me. They're the ones who ruined the company, not me. Especially that woman. She seduced our son and ingratiated herself with her father. We are victims too, so stop complaining about it, they shouted. Others also criticized my father and me, trying to deflect attention from themselves. Despite the parents' wild accusations, Henry, visibly upset, tried to calm the former employees. Please wait, everyone. Yes, my father's company collapsed, but it's because of those three also. I want to help all of you who lost your jobs unfairly. Please listen to me. As Henry spoke, the chaos slowly calmed down and the former employees turned their attention to us. Henry called out each person's name, announcing their new job placements. Realizing they were not forgotten, the employees let out sighs of relief. After Henry announced everyone's placement, his parents started making a scene. Hey, Henry, what about us? Why are you ignoring us? We're victims too. Tell us our job placements. If you do, we might even forgive that man and allow your marriage to that woman, they complained. Ignoring his parents' outbursts, Henry began explaining how the company went bankrupt, a situation his own parents had caused. I apologize for the inconvenience caused to all of you, but thanks to a kind-hearted CEO, your jobs are secure. Please calm down and let's start fresh, Henry said. After addressing the employees, he turned to my father and bowed deeply. I really apologize for the inconvenience and thank you for considering my request. I will work with all my heart. The former employees, seeing Henry's respect, also showed their gratitude towards my father. Meanwhile, his parents were the only ones objecting. Don't be fooled. That man ruined the company and that woman encouraged him. Wake up to reality. You're struggling for jobs because the company was destroyed, right? Just because you're getting help doesn't mean you should forget the truth. Despite his parents' desperate pleas, everyone had already heard the truth from Henry. They completely ignored his parents. Even my father disregarded their complaints. When the former employees looked to him for reassurance, He promised to share more details later, and they left, relieved and thanking my father. After everyone had gone and it was quiet, his parents started fussing about their future. "We're losing this house we used as collateral. We're going to be homeless. What are we supposed to do now?" Henry sighed in exasperation at his parents, who still tried to blame us. I had enough and finally said, "I don't care what you think. You got what you deserved, and it can't be helped. Why don't you show some remorse?" I scolded them, but they didn't seem to listen. Unable to bear their persistence any longer, I lost my patience. "Haven't you just caused trouble for Henry all this time? Boasting about being business owners and only caring about titles? Isn't that why all this happened?" Upon hearing my words, his parents looked like they were ready to argue back, implying that I was being rude. But then my father stepped in firmly, indicating he wouldn't let them speak further. "A business owner is supposed to take responsibility. You should at least complete your final task properly," he said. Left speechless by our collective scolding, his parents could say nothing more. We left them behind and walked away. Eventually, his parents lost everything: the company, the house, the land. They never provided any guarantees to the former employees and avoided taking responsibility. After losing everything, they were caught for deceit and dashing. When Henry's parents reached out to him for help, Henry, having cut ties with them, coldly turned them away. They're probably in jail now. We've heard nothing from them since. Even if they get out, they still owe debts to the former employees, so their situation hasn't changed. Afterward, Henry and I quit our jobs and joined my father's company. We lived off our savings in the first month, working for free as promised. One day at work, we met a former employee from his parents' company. This person rushed over to us, eager to shake our hands and express their gratitude to my father for giving them a job, to Henry for arranging it, and surprisingly to me. I didn't remember, but apparently I had helped that person with some materials soon after they joined the company. After expressing immense gratitude and a desire to keep working hard, the former employee left. Feeling somewhat redeemed by his words, we hurried to my father's office. He welcomed us warmly and pulled out several thick envelopes from his desk drawer, handing them to us. "What's this, Dad?" I asked. "It's your salaries for the past months." It ended up being multiple envelopes because it couldn't all fit into one, he said with a laugh. We were stunned. It hadn't been many months, and with all the new employees hired, it seemed impossible for us to have earned this much. Yet here he was, giving us our salaries. We were taken aback and couldn't quite believe it, but my father continued, "Your hard work revitalized the team. They constantly expressed their gratitude and concern for you. I couldn't leave such excellent employees unpaid, especially since our performance had improved so much." Hearing this, we hugged each other and cried. We had been so focused on our tasks that we hadn't realized the impact we had made. But even more than that, we were touched by the concern shown for us. Then my father added something even more wonderful. "Henry, I'm impressed with your leadership. If you're okay with it, would you marry my daughter?" Yes, of course. I'm honored and grateful," Henry replied tearfully, bowing to me and my father. I hugged Henry, crying alongside him. And so we got married. We continued working at my father's company, living happily every day. Gradually, we became more skilled at our jobs, contributing even more effectively. This allowed us to discuss production efficiency and new ideas with my father. Henry was also busy, visiting the factories and subsidiaries to ensure everything ran smoothly. He was constantly proposing solutions and suggesting the implementation of new systems. We were more passionate about our work than ever before, finding true fulfillment in our work. However, our time at the company was about to take a brief pause. I was about to go on maternity leave. My father, Henry, our colleagues, and I were all looking forward